Paula Hammond, welcome.
Hello.
To InfraTalk America. It's such a pleasure to have you. I was sort of reflecting back as I was looking at your glorious record, and back in 2008, you were appointed the first woman.
7, actually.
2007.
Yeah.
The first woman Secretary of Transportation in the state of Washington.
That's correct.
You recently completed service. The American Road and Transportation Builders Association as their first woman board chair.
Yes.
And also the first former state DOT CEO to serve in that position.
You know, I hadn't noticed that distinction, but yes.
I can't find another example of it.
Very good. And that was in ARTBA's 120-year history.
120-year history.
I broke that glass ceiling.
Well, that seems to be a pattern with you. So I want to do a little bit of just background talk, a little bit about your as I said, your impressive array of accomplishments over the years. But so really beginning, you had how many years total with the state of Washington?
34.
34 years.
Went to Oregon State University. Civil engineering degree, and then came to work at WashDOT as a surveyor and asphalt plant inspector.
That's how it all started.
Yeah, engineer 1.
And from this, so a woman serving in that role, fairly far back.
Yeah, a lot. 44 years ago.
44 years. I didn't want to fail on the math. Can you give us a sense of being a woman in what was probably a reasonably male-dominated environment back then?
Yeah, it started in college, really? Where in my class at Oregon State of 120 graduating seniors, there were 8 women. And so, that's kind of lonely, which is why I joined a sorority right when I got there. And then coming to Washington State DOT, we had, the agency hadn't hired a lot of folks in the previous 10 years. They'd kind of been in an interesting maintain and preserve mode. And so they hired a pretty large class of graduating engineers into the agency. And there was a handful of women, but we were an oddity, certainly. Hard for the field crews and the field offices to get used to seeing a young woman amongst their midst, especially a civil engineer. So that was interesting. But, I probably could have quit 2 or 3 times during that first year or felt like it. But once I persevered and kind of decided I'm going to make this my career, then it got easier each time. And I had so many good mentors in the agency who recognized something in me, who said, let's go try this. Why don't you take this job? This would be a good promotion. This would be a great area for you to learn everything about transportation. And that's what helped me become secretary, was that experience I'd had over those years.
And I'm trying to recollect. I joined Federal Highway in 2009, and prior to that was Deputy Commissioner of Maine DOT, which is where we first met.
That's
I think
right.
Even before you were secretary,
at
you
the
were still
AASHTO
active
table.
in AASHTO.
Yeah, very active, yeah.
So at that point, you were already becoming, I think, a fairly impressive influencer, if you will, in the AASHTO community. It didn't take long.
I was the chief of staff for the 7 years prior to becoming secretary. So during the Doug McDonald era.
Right. So you began your sort of national exposure and national activities
in early
prior
2000.
to becoming secretary.
Yeah.
Big difference. And as I said, that's where we met along the way.
That's right.
On the circuit, if you will.
Right.
And there's another milestone. You also were recently chaired the Women's Transportation Seminar, which is an international organization.
My personal passion.
And it has been a personal passion of yours for a long time. Yeah. So we can see there's a theme here. Obviously, you've been a trailblazer, a leader, and workforce development is another passion of yours. So I want to talk about that and, what we're facing as the industry, certainly the public sector and the challenges associated with that. Can you first talk about your current role, your senior vice presidency at WSP, a little bit about what that entails?
I think I have the best job in the consulting world because I'm really a utility player and help people achieve their strategic goals, whether it's a state DOT or whether I'm working with a region or whether it's a local agency or even within our own company as we bring in new people and different parts of our organization are growing. There's a need to help fit things together that makes sense and to bring everybody along together. And so for DOTs today, just think of the changes they've gone through, the transformation, not just of how we used to do things, but how transportation operations and autonomous and connected vehicles are going to change the world, but how we're thinking about how we fund and price our transportation system that's equitable and fair. There's so many things that DOTs have to deal with now that perhaps they either weren't equipped with when they came into the job or are having to find new ways to strategically get things done. So that's what I love about my job is I can say, hey, here's what another state's doing, or have you thought about lining things up strategically this way to help you achieve those goals? And I'm also a big champion of performance management and performance-based investments. And to me, it's all just so logical. Maybe that's my engineering background. But when you think about having strategic goals and things you know you want to accomplish, then using performance data and actions that can help guide what you do first, second, and third, I think is a logical and good way to achieve some positive outcomes. And that's what we're all about now, right, is outcomes at a time when our workforce is really low. And we're developing and bringing new people into the industry that don't have the 40 years that we have under our belt. So I think it's just an exciting time in transportation.
Isn't it, though?
Yeah.
And and workforce, again, the challenge, we have targeted technology sectors.
Yeah.
And the two principal ones that are the current focus, have been for the last few years, is digital project delivery and sustainable composite structures.
Yes.
And those are two areas, and a big focus on digital right now, given all that's going on.
Right.
And one of the issues that hinder the potential for state DOTs to really accelerate the advancement of a digital approach and digitizing the project delivery system, just, we'll stipulate the benefits are extraordinary. You
Sure.
save money, you save time.
Yeah.
There are more. The technology can translate into a much more sustainable approach to project delivery. It's all upside. The change it would take, or does take, within a state DOT, culturally, and then just from the standpoint of the transition and training and
staff development.
Development, and so the workforce issue, I've concluded, really is a big factor in our ability to accelerate that. There's a Trimble, one of our premier sponsors, is a global company, and they did an analysis on a project in Norway. Because Europe, Norway, they're several years ahead of us in the open standards and all the things it takes to really accelerate this technology. But they concluded a 90 to 95% reduction in change orders was the result of a really, I call it
That's fantastic.
full-scale digital approach.
Yeah.
It's massive. Yeah. If you look at the Federal Aid Highway Program over the next 10 or 15 years, we're talking billions of savings. And those dollars, as you know, become available for more projects.
Turn it back into
hopefully
concrete and steel.
So, the imperative to really move this ahead is there now. So that leads us to one element of the workforce challenge. Demographics don't lie, unless, particularly in the civil engineering world, we have got to get more young women and girls interested in pursuing a career. And in civil engineering, one, then somehow compete with the private sector to recruit them after they're trained engineers, which is becoming a much more difficult task. So women are a key factor in how we're going to meet these workforce challenges. So one, is my thesis accurate? And two, what do we do? How do we get more girls and young women interested in this profession?
And I would say yes, and one of the things that's the downside of the workforce challenges certainly is that there's not enough people in our industry. Civil engineering has struggled over the years to get more diverse and to grow. The computer engineering world that I live in Seattle, they take people away from the kinds of dirty boots engineering that we grew up to do. And so that's a challenge. But the opportunity, the upside, is that there's space and room for women and minorities to join the ranks of DOTs to really truly represent the populations that we're serving. That's always been our challenge. A bunch of white guys. And so for us to now engage differently with our communities and better than we ever have before, we need to start having that good representation of the communities we serve in. But also, I think that the enterprise, as I call it, of transportation is consultants, private sector and public. We're all challenged. We're all in a better place these days to help each other. I mean, I think this digital future is one the consulting world and suppliers can really help develop and deliver. And I think the states are recognizing that. Yep. But I also think that the other part of our enterprise needs to address the workforce shortages together. I don't think it's all civil engineers that we need. The ability now for us to have such a diverse kind of range of disciplines to help a DOT do its job, I think is what's exciting. Communicators, data scientists, climate scientists, planners,
10 years ago, I never would have said DOTs are in need of data scientists.
Well, there you go. But you look around at what we all, if we got together and created a campaign for people to join us in changing our transportation future, think of what we could do together. That's the frustrating part of each of our associations and organizations that we belong to. We're all trying to have some kind of workforce initiatives, and we would be so much better together if we created a national campaign. So I'm signing up today to help.
Interesting idea.
I'm going to help do that. So if you go ahead and start it, I'll be the yes person.
It might be beyond our scope, but we'll certainly support it and talk about it and report on it.
I think it's something we need to do because our transportation future depends on it.
It really does. Yeah. And as the other challenge, of course, is the generational shift and the rapid decline of civil engineering of our generation.
The boomers. Off we go.
So as that trend continues, and we know it will, there's going to be a point at which state DOTs are in real trouble. Now, the other dynamic that results in we've seen for years now that the consulting engineering community has become critical to helping state DOTs deliver projects, deliver their program, do studies, analysis, which is basically mitigating the difficulties of attracting staff. And often it may be the most effective means because you're really buying services from, from firms that have real depth of expertise and can really provide something on a project basis that you wouldn't invest in a full-time employee year-round.
There you go. Yeah, I think that's true.
There's a real, there's a growing dependency on that. Do you see that, and is that going to grow even further?
I do, and of course the Infrastructure Act has helped, promote a lot of projects, a lot of new starts right now. So I think everybody's really busy, which is another part of the challenge on workforce. But I also have had state DOTs say, when you all come onto our project and, help with whatever, a corridor, interchange, et cetera, we also need you to train our people on how to be good project managers, how to put a good program and project out. And so they're asking us, which is not the way it used to be. The state project manager or project engineer was the boss, and that person, directed everything. Now it's a much more collaborative. We have project engineers in a state DOT that only have 2 or 3 years of experience, and they're running major projects. And so the DOTs are starting to recognize there's a staff development component to the consultant support as well. A lot of embedded, co-located, sit with our people, help deliver this project together. And I think that then strengthens the DOTs.
The other conversation I have with a number of people is the transformation of state DOTs, what they once were, to this new age digital technology-driven institutions. Mm-hmm. Do you think that transformation can serve as a recruitment tool for the current and next generation of
all the video gamers?
Exactly.
I think so. And the more we can progress as state DOTs with good technology, good computer systems, et cetera, which was not always the legislators' top priority. Remember, you got to get them to buy the equipment.
And we're working toward having a real policy audience at the state level, and I like them to hear this because the resources invested up front in technology and training will pay back huge
dividends. Yeah, and so yes, I mean that's part of my campaign to have a transportation career. This is an exciting place to be, and you can help change the transportation system in your community. Why wouldn't you want to be a part of that with all the technology and skills younger people have today?
You heard it here. You heard it here first, folks. Paula Hammond is going to lead this national campaign to address our workforce development challenges.
I need to learn to stop saying no to things. Start saying no.
You've never been very good at saying no because you've had so many roles.
I'm a joiner.
So I want to sort of begin to wind things up because we could do this all day, and I promise you I won't. But we've sort of posed an overarching question to a number of interviews we've done in the last few weeks, and it's basically, how do we move innovation in more effectively and more quickly throughout the Federal Aid Highway Program? And that's a question we could spend another half hour on by itself. But just generally speaking, somehow the Federal Aid Highway Program is defined in law as federally assisted and state administered. So there are 52 individual institutions throughout the Federal Aid Highway Program that have extraordinary independence and ability to make decisions about how to deliver projects and contracting methods, whatever the case may be. That's not dictated by the federal government. Federal government provides money and broad oversight of policy.
And a lot of hoops.
Yeah. So if you have a technology, an innovation, and we're involved in several, including composite bridges, talk about obstacles. But that's beginning to improve as knowledge and education occurs. So how do we break that down from going door to door to 52 institutions and somehow creating a more streamlined approach to acceptance of new age innovation?
Well, I think part of the trick is to get out of our own way. And I mentioned hoops, processes to get funds and grants out, to the people who can try an innovation just have to be so much more streamlined than they are. I also think innovation is bred in a culture of creativity and risk-taking. And we as public agencies, I still say we don't accept risk very well because usually we get our heads taken off if we fail. But the culture of risk and testing and trying things has to be created from the top of the agency all the way to the bottom to give people the space to try new things and to say, I'll have your back if you fail. Because we have to try these things. So I think it's a culture thing.
Yeah, it is. Well said. And I've used that very same illustration myself because you're exactly right. When I was at Federal Highway and we were developing and implementing the Everyday Counts program, I used to describe that as top down, bottom up. Didn't work otherwise.
Yeah. I was going to mention Everyday Counts because I think that's a really great, long sustained program. And when Victor Mendez had that initial creation, it was just perfect.
Yeah. I mean,
it took a while to get going, but it's great.
It was remarkably quick.
Yeah.
I remember when we rolled out the first round of EDC, we had a number of initiatives, including warm mix asphalt.
Yeah.
It's a favorite of mine because at the time, in 2010, of total asphalt production in the country, the warm mix represented about 4%.
Yeah.
I just did an interview with Audrey Copeland, the head of NAPA, National Asphalt Paving Association, several months ago. And she said today it's upwards of about 44%.
Wow.
And represents about 200,000 cars a year in greenhouse gas reductions.
That's amazing.
So they're doing some really progressive things in terms of climate change as an industry.
You know what else it did? Everyday Counts brought people together locally to talk differently about what they could do in an innovative way and built relationships. Yeah. So
the State Transportation Innovation Council, STICS for short, one in every state. There are a number of them who are very active. It really has catalyzed that local conversation, and not just within their own organizations, but academia, contractors. It definitely had an impact. And the fact that it's still going on means the states sort of embraced it, run it, own it, and Federal Highway continues to be an important catalyst to make it all happen.
Yeah.
So it is a good approach, but the state DOT itself and being open and willing to take those risks, because the risk aversion will come from the top, buying in and communicating effectively with the frontline champions of change project managers. If they have that confidence, I think you're exactly right. I think that risk tolerance really grows. And you can't be successful in advancing innovation if you're not willing to take any risk.
And one way to kind of help educate people above on that is to say, this is risky. We don't even know if it's going to work. But watch us try this and be a champion as we try something different. And then help us celebrate success, or we'll tell you what we learned.
That's great. When we're doing Everyday Accounts, I traveled to a lot of states, Federal Highway Division offices to really help our folks understand what we're after. And clearly there was a need for that kind of communication, particularly at the division level. And the relationship they have, as you know, with state DOTs is critical to ensure.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate your observations on this. I think
Thank you.
I think they're well-founded and a direction that all states need to go. And a lot of them are.
Yes.
So
we have some great folks working out there now.
We could do this all day, as I said, but we're not going to.
Okay. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a rare pleasure. Again, thank you for your service over the years and the work you continue to do.
Oh, you're welcome, Greg.
Very active with AASHTO. So a lot of the work you're doing very much is in the public interest. So,
thank you.
So thank you for that.
All right.
Thank you for joining us today.
All right. Thank you.